approach is that Missouri is an ambidextrous state politically. And being ambidextrous is a gift. At least it's a gift for a point guard in the NBA, and I'm sure also in college basketball. To be politically ambidextrous is a gift. And it is a rare thing coming out of this election cycle for states to be able to claim that, and I'm going to mix metaphors, to have a foot in each camp. But when you look at what happened in the country, it really is quite surprising that of the states that were close, the only close state that stayed with the Republicans and gave its electoral college votes to John McCain was Missouri. And it didn't get resolved until yesterday. And so I get to say, oh, the election was so 2 weeks ago. When you look at why did this happen, there are probably many ways that you could read the exit polls. And to some degree, there is a lot of dispute about whether exit polls mean very much. But when I looked at the exit polls, I was quite surprised that union households in Missouri didn't increase at all from 2004 to 2008. That union households were exactly the same percentage of turnout, and that Bush and McCain got exactly the same percentage of the vote in union households, which is 40%. So I don't want to get into card check, but I don't understand why organized labor thinks it's owed anything. When you take a look at what they were capable of delivering, I say, duh. There are lots of groups that outperformed them. But I think the group that here would have made the big difference when I looked at the exit polls were white born-agains. And while white born-agains were more supportive of Bush than they were of McCain, if you measure from 04 to 08, they were a larger percentage of the turnout in Missouri than they were in 2004. And so I think that Sarah Palin tapped into the Pentecostal strain here in Missouri, and that it really helped. And without that, very likely, there would have been a big difference in the turnout, and there would have been a big difference in the vote. But when you're looking at a margin of less than 4,000 votes. However, what I had said both in St. Louis and in Kansas City earlier in the year was that my belief that whether or not Missouri went for Obama or it went for McCain, that you would always have an entree to the Obama White House because of Claire McCaskill, and it was a matter of connecting the dots. Had it not been for Obama's victory in the Missouri primary in February, I don't believe he would have been nominated president, because there had to be something between that bookend of Iowa and the bookend of North Carolina. He had to carry a state that looked like real America, and he had to carry a state that had something of everything in it. And this was the state that he carried. Had it not been for Claire McCaskill's endorsement, I don't think he would have carried Missouri. So I had said, no Missouri, no Obama, no McCaskill, no Missouri. Not nominated in the primary meant he didn't have a chance to win the general election. So I had suggested the most important thing for the Missouri business community to do is to figure out what are your access points to Claire McCaskill, and on what is it that you can get her to agree with you on. And the suggestion would definitely be to tear away from the old rhetoric and the old set of issues, and to talk about some of the things that I've heard since sitting here in the audience. I don't know how any of those things that have been talked about here today have anything to do with political party, or how one can decide that because you know what a party's platform used to have in it, that you could predict how somebody would behave. Because without somebody like her, not only would you have more limited access to an Obama White House, but you also have a very difficult time in a modern United States Senate. After this election, the United States Senate will have probably 58, 59, or 60 Democrats. We still don't know Georgia, and we don't know Minnesota. So it can't have any more than 42 Republicans. It will have at least 58 Democrats. What's interesting about looking at how the Democrats captured all of those states is that they've gradually built a majority based upon people who've never served in the U.S. House of Representatives. They have captured it with people like McCaskill, who have had experience in state and local government, where the presumption is that the employers in those states have had some relationship with them. Of the 100 senators, 32 of them are serving in their first term. So it's no longer a problem to have a United States senator with limited experience. Colorado, Virginia, and North Carolina have both senators who have been elected since 2004. I mean, imagine those states. So I think the idea that we used to carry that, well, somebody's got to be there for a while, and until they get reelected, we're really not going to bother to get to know them. You have to take that and throw that out the window. Therefore, I would have some comments to say about Kit Bond, which I prefaced in St. Louis and in Kansas City by saying I know many people here are going to be gravely upset when I say something that sounds negative about Kit Bond. And I'm not saying anything negative about Kit Bond as much as I am saying that the 2010 cycle for the Senate puts people like Kit Bond on the ballot at a time when, if they had been running in 06 and 08, with the same messages and the same campaigns that they ran when they were elected 6 years before that, they would have lost. So don't be surprised if people start to think that Kit Bond shouldn't run again, or that if he does, he'll have a very difficult race, or that if he does run, he isn't going to have to change some of the things that he talked about. The advantage to you all and to him politically has been his ability to deliver the kinds of things we just talked about. He has been on the Appropriations Committee and right now is the ranking minority member on the Transportation Subcommittee. Those kinds of things that provided experience and projects back to the states were the kinds of things that were getting incumbents in trouble in 06 and 08. So I would say that the jury is out on whether or not the assets that these long-term incumbents have always had at their disposal really are, in an era of both a diminished number of Republicans in the Senate, and one of them being John McCain, and we all know how much he loves those kinds of things, and the fact that seniority has been a real burden. So I'm not saying that Kit Bond is going to lose or that he shouldn't run, and I will get into a lot of trouble saying this, but is Kit Bond Ted Stevens without the trial and the baggage? And is he Elizabeth Dole, but with a residency in the state? There were two very senior Republicans that went down in this election cycle, Ted Stevens and Elizabeth Dole. And I use that as a point of caution for the class that's up in 2010. In the House of Representatives, I mean, really quickly here, Missouri again is politically ambidextrous. You have 5 Republicans and 4 Democrats. New York has 3 Republicans, so you've got way more than they have. Pennsylvania and Illinois each have 7 Republicans, so you've got 5. So as a smaller delegation, if you're concerned about your connections to a Republican base in the House, you have them, but they're coming into a House that's going to have fewer of them. Republicans lost 21 seats in the House of Representatives this cycle, and as a result, Roy Blunt, being the honorable person that you all know him to be and the kind of person we know him to be, fell on his sword the morning after and said, okay, I give up my leadership spot. So Roy Blunt is no longer in the Republican leadership, which can be an advantage to the business community of Missouri because it might give him more time to focus on the issues that come through his Committee of Energy and Commerce. So I would look at that as not the worst thing in the world. It's not like he's going back to be nothing. He's going back to be on a major committee. But because of Missouri, Republicans didn't lose 30 seats. I had said that if the open seat that Kenny Hulshoff was vacating and if Sam Graves lost in the 6th district in Kansas City area, that Republicans would have lost a lot of seats. It was a bit countercultural in what happened here because the culture wars that came up in both of those congressional districts helped the Republican candidates keep those seats. Culture wars didn't work elsewhere, and I would half suspect that this relationship that I see in how Missouri worked out at the presidential level, that because those 2 seats were in play and because the culture wars were in play, that it lifted turnout among white born-agains, and that in effect helped McCain carry the state.